Welcome to another morning coffee with Trevor, your host, Trevor Matthews. And once again, thank you guys for attending, showing up, having a coffee with me. It's definitely not my signature coffee since I'm down here in Florida, but it's all right. I'll take it. I'll take it. I do have my cup though. Bring my cup with me. So yesterday we're having a pretty good conversation with Adrian. I don't know if he'll jump on today, but talking about safety and how safety is so important, especially with so important in our industry, period. But talking about how it's more important in different refrigerants, especially in natural refrigerants, talking about R290, talking about CO2 or ammonia. It's very important in there to understand that, because we can get very complacent as technicians in the field, working out in the field, doing the same thing, maybe day in and day out. And then all of a sudden you start to work at another site. I've done this before. I worked with large commercial refrigeration contractors, which also did industrial. So I had to go to some industrial calls. Very nervous, not trained, not understanding, walking in a room and my eyes start like burning a bit and my nose starts to burn a bit. And when you talk to an ammonia guy, he's like, well, then you're working with some real refrigerant. That's what they say. And I actually went with other guys where they couldn't even walk into a room like that. And you need to be aware of your surroundings in our industry. So you need to understand what you're getting yourself into. And that's why safety is so important. And I continue to talk and preach this about being very safe when you're out there, because you can fall off a ladder, you can electrocute yourself, that you can, smother yourself in a confined space. And it doesn't matter what refrigerant is there, asphyxiate yourself. So it's important to be safe out there and think about things before you do it, because there's a lot of times I've worked way too many hours, like 20 hours in a day, 28, 30 hours straight. And that's not safe. That's not healthy. I've seen me driving home from a site after working a night shift for 17, 18 hours, falling asleep at the wheel. That's not what we should be doing. It's not safe for you, not safe for the other people. So just be aware of this stuff. If you have to pull over and fall asleep in your van or your truck, do that. I've done it before after I realized that I shouldn't be driving. I know you want to get home, be with your family and stuff, but that's something that you don't want to do. So today I'm in Claremont, Florida, and it's the HVACR Symposium and Brian Orr's event, which I'm super excited about. We went out for a meet and greet last night to meet a bunch of cool people. Definitely people that are really want to give back to the industry, care about the industry, want to help other technicians and refrigeration professionals out there. So that's what I really like about this event, networking, building more relationships. So that's my goal over the next 2 or 3 days, is to build more relationships with the people here and learn about more. I sat down with a gentleman named Jordan last night, and he's VRF or VRV specialist. Like, he's an expert. So I sat there just to listen. And this is what I want to tell you as a technician. You need to listen, sit down. And that's something I have a hard time doing. My wife will tell me all the time, but sit down and listen. And I sat down and he was just going, he was very passionate about it. And he was talking about it. The way that made me excited to learn about it. I want to learn more about VRF. I'm going to go actually sit on his training just because I've seen the passion he had for VRV systems. And I don't know a lot about them. Like I've been to some of the trainings before, but I haven't installed any myself. I serviced a few of them. The first time I seen a VRV system when I was working in Australia. I'm like, what is this? I'm used to central air, big condenser, duct work. They don't have duct work in Australia. They're like, what's duct work? So that's when I seen them the first, because I'm like, I'm looking at the condenser and there's like 8 wires going to the condenser fan. I'm like, what is this? How do you work on something? Like, how do you even check this? So it's always a new learning curve. And for me, I think I'm going to sit in on one of those training, but I'm here to learn more. I'm going to be presenting this afternoon. I'm going to talk about a compressor story, but my goal here is to learn, network, and educate myself a bit more. It's all about getting better, learning more. It's a lot of it is on air quality, HVAC, commercial HVAC. There is some refrigeration. There's advanced refrigeration podcasts. There's myself, Chris Stevens here will be talking about refrigeration. There's a few others. But I need to learn more myself personally on the air quality side, airflow side, checking getting the rate static pressures, understanding the new ways of doing things, because the systems are designing differently today. And, most houses are not sized, load calculations are not done correctly. Airflow is not good. Even in my house, back home, the airflow is terrible. Like my upstairs in the winter is cold and it's warm in the summer, even though I have heat and air conditioning. So it's just like a major ductwork issue. But there's a lot of other talks that I want to sit on. I know Eric Kaiser's doing one on moisture and systems, which is something still that I need to learn more about. I totally understand that when you get moisture in POE oil, it starts to break it down, create acid. There's a reverse hydrolysis effect, and then it causes issues in the compressor, in the windings of the compressor, that leads to a failure, and which could lead to a failure. It will over time, but it depends on how long it takes and how bad it is. But I want to sit in there and kind of get to understand more at that chemist level, understanding of moisture and the effect inside the system. So I'm excited about that as well. So how's everybody doing this morning? Anybody have any questions? Anything they want to talk about? Burning desires? So flying down on the plane, I'm reading a book that I've read multiple times. It's called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. If you haven't read it before, I highly recommend taking a look at it. I think this is the third, fourth time I'm reading it. And I've never used to read books before. Like 2 or 3 years ago, before that, I wasn't reading books. I've read manuals and stuff, but I wasn't interested in reading books. Now I read books all the time. I know it's growing my mind, growing my mindset. In this book here, even the first 2 or 3 chapters just talk about desire, if you want to become rich. But it's not only about becoming rich. Rich is different for everybody. Rich for financial. Some people are financial. Other people talk about rich as being, having a good quality of life with your family. You know what I mean? Be able to hang out with the people you love. So everyone has a different way of thinking about rich. But in this, the first 2 chapters talk about desire. And I was thinking about it while I was flying down, because there's some good stories in it. But as a technician, as a refrigeration professional, you want to have a desire, to do a great job, to help the business you're working for out, help the customers out, grow your mindset, grow your technical abilities, and have that desire to reach to the next level. A lot of us, even myself, when I started out, my goal, my desire was to get my refrigeration ticket. And after I got my license, I'm set. And then for a few years, for my career side, there was no desire. It was just, okay, I'm going to travel, because my whole goal was traveling. So I started to travel and go and work at different places. Like I went to Australia, I went to New Zealand, lots of places over in the South Pacific. But I didn't have that desire for like the refrigeration side to get in, to learn more. So I spent a few years where I wasn't learning a lot about refrigeration. Where some of you maybe here, like Adrian, he was just getting into CO2, maybe just a couple of years into the CO2. So he was starting to learn that stuff, invest in his skills and trying to get better at that and teach that. And in that first chapter, it really affected me that you need to have a desire for what you want to do. And when you get to a point and just say you reach that goal, there needs to be something next. Because if you don't have that next step, you're just going to drift. I've listened to lots of good talks, motivational speakers, and it's so true. If you don't have a goal you're working towards, or something you're working towards in general, you just drift and you're going to be stuck. And as a technician, you don't want to be like that, because then you're going to start getting frustrated. Other things are going to affect you. You're going to lose your work quality of life. You're going to work too much. You're going to stress yourself out. And the big thing is that as a technician, you want to make sure that you try to place those things where it makes you happy, where you're not working 80 hours a week, because you don't have to. You don't have to work 80 hours a week. You do it because you want to, maybe. But you do have to say no sometimes. for your mental health and for your safety. And good technicians don't have, well, not good technicians, but a lot of technicians that have a lot of skill don't have to work 80 hours. They work 80 hours a week a lot of times because they don't have other good technicians at their company, and the company relies only on them. And then I blame the leadership at those companies, because they should be helping those mechanics, those technicians that are taking all these difficult calls and answering the phone for all the other technicians, helping them all out, where that leader, that business owner should be building 5 or 6 of you inside that company. And you should be striving to be better. But you should have 5 or 6 of you that have that level of knowledge, technical ability. Then you guys wouldn't all have to be working 80 hours a week. You know, you'll finish jobs quicker. You know, you'll be able to maybe not have to work on a job and be like, this is not a job that we need to do today, right now. We can do it tomorrow. And I know, I totally understand. There are some situations where you're using process plants and every minute it's down, it's costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've been there. You know, something shut down, it's $1 million a day. I've seen it. And so I understand there are situations where, you know, you can't get oil, but a lot of the time, especially in the HVAC world, besides, I guess, data centers, there may be a few other areas things can wait. Not all the time, but a lot of times it can wait. But you need to understand, you know, how to say no. And then in this book was just talking about, you know, how to have that burning desire to continue on, to get better, to grow. And there's a lot of the great points in there. It's one about this Edwin B. Burns, I think his name was, and he was a poor guy, didn't have much going on. He wanted to get into business with Thomas Edison. Not go work for him, but that's what he did. But he wanted to get in business with him. It took him over 5 or 6 years just working under the guy where he didn't even know who he was really. But he spent those years, 5, 6, 7 years. He put the time in, but he had that goal, he had the vision. And that's what you should have as a technician. Where do you want to go? If you're a business owner, where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? How do you get there? It's not, as a business owner, working your technicians to death. You're not going to grow that way. Really, I read The E-Myth of HVAC by Ken Goodwin and Michael Gerber. And he says, you know, because he was a technician and he became a business owner, what happens is a lot of the technicians who become the business owners are still the technician. They're working in the business, but not working on the business. And that's the difference between the leaders and you know, the technicians that own businesses. Because you want to make sure your technicians are happy. You know, they can finish jobs on confidently. If you see someone, and this is what I talk to when I go talk to business owner, and even when I went in and for interviews, I asked them, are you going to give me feedback on the way I'm working? Like on how long it's taking me for a service call or different jobs, you know? A lot of times they don't do that. The only time you get feedback is when something wrong happens and they're complaining or there's a callback or something. They're not saying, oh man, you did a good job. Okay. I've been noticing the last month or the last 3 weeks that these types of calls have been taking you a little while. Do you want to talk about it? You know, do we need to invest some time, invest some money in you to learn this system a little bit more? Say it's a package unit, the makeup air, it doesn't even matter. Do we need to spend a little bit more time with you so you can feel more comfortable and confident to reduce that troubleshooting time? You know, that's not happening out there. And this is something that we kind of need to change. And I would kind of want to like to help change it. And there's a massive, it's not going to be easy, right? It's a lot of a mindset. Well, no, I need them out there. They're just the workers. But they're your brand. Those technicians are your brand. And so it's hard to get through to a lot of the owners to understand it. Some get it. There's some that get it. They totally understand this. Where they need quality technicians to take care of the jobs. And then there's some larger organizations that try their best, but they're so big, they got so many clients. And they even have internal training programs, but they still struggle with the development of the technicians. So it's interesting. It's interesting, this field. Anybody got anything to add? Any questions?
When it comes to the youngsters, morning everybody.
Morning.
If I look at my age group, and it was something that happened in our country when South Africa when the apartheid regime ended and the ANC took over, we had a new government. We had this massive brain drain of technicians in our country. And a lot of people my age then, so we were in our 20s, early 30s, and a lot of the guys left for Australia, England, New Zealand.
I met a lot of them. There's a lot in Australia, a lot of South Africans in Australia when I was there.
Yes, yeah. And so we have that problem in the country where you got this massive age gap of about 10 years. So if I look at myself now, in my early 50s, I take from like say 55 down to about 45, maybe even 40. There's nobody there with skill, knowledge who's actually training the younger guys. So you'd have a young guy coming into the field and he's in his 21s, but he's got to go with a 60-year-old technician type of thing. He works in totally different to way things work today. He's got no go to work with electronic equipment and speed drives and that kind of stuff. So I find that's a major problem that we have, and it's difficult to get around it. So you end up guys getting qualified, but haven't had that mentor, that artisan, that journeyman that took him under his wing and said, "This is the way you do it," and so on and so forth. It's rather interesting. I don't know if it's happening to anybody else in other countries, but I find it a massive problem.
Yeah, it's definitely happened here. I see it. A journeyman now is a phone call away. So that's the apprenticeship I've been seeing here in Canada. It's our apprenticeships. You're supposed to be riding along with a journeyman for your apprenticeship. That's what an apprenticeship is. You're supposed to be riding. There are, situations where they can go out and do a little thing on their own. You know what I mean? As they get more experience and they know how to do things safely. But it's pretty much you're a phone call away. That's what I'm talking to lots of journeymen and foremen about it. Like Trevor, it's too expensive for two of us to go out and some companies do it. I've talked to some business owners where they allot like 6 months or a year where they'll pay that technician to go around with a journeyman, but that's still not really an apprenticeship. That's a ride along, for a year. Apprenticeship is, you work with them day in, day out, learning the tips and the tricks. And it explains that. I talked about that a few days ago, Mastery. It explains what an apprenticeship is. And if you look at the definition of apprenticeship, it's definitely not what's going on. So it's not only there. I think it's even here. People are struggling just to have technicians go to sites. And what I've learned, and I've talked to a bunch of people that are my age as well, and said, Trevor, well, it's a totally different work ethic. Like people that are in their 20s now compared to us, because we would go out and we would work. We'd go do night shift. I'd do 6 months of nights. But it didn't matter. I'd do days. I'd do split shifts. I would do all of it because I wanted to learn. I wanted to make money. I was eager. And like I talked to some of my buddies that are foremen or they're running crews and stuff. And he's like, sometimes they don't even show up or they don't call. Or, after 8 hours, they put their tool bag down and they just walk away. They say, okay, I'm done for the day, which, okay, 100% you need to have a work-life balance. It's not going to be the same where you work 12, 15, 20 hours a day, which is okay. But like a lot of them are asking me, can you teach technicians how to be a mechanic? And then there's some other business owner asked me, can you teach my younger guys, because I don't want the older guys to influence them. And that's the age range that you're talking about, Adrian, or just, maybe even a little bit younger, because they didn't have that, that step up. It started 20, 25 years ago where that apprenticeship started to, well, I guess maybe it's as the prices increase of the cost of a technician. Because when I started out, I think it was like maybe 30, for I'm talking about union rates, I don't know, maybe like $35, $32, $35. And now it's like $50. So in 20, 15 years, there's a massive increase in wage. And one of the things is that wage, everyone's not worth that. There's some people worth $100 an hour as a technician, and there's some that are worth $20 an hour, even though they might have been in there 10 years or 7 years. And that they all get, a lot of them all get paid the same. Doesn't matter if it's union or non-union, because the non-union people have to keep up with the costs and the pricing to be competitive, to have good technicians. And it's unfortunate to see that there's just such a lot of gaps out there with all the technology and all the training that goes on and education that's shared. I think, I don't know. I think we're gonna more. I got to focus more on maybe the business owners to excite those technicians, because one of the things I see, that the people that are training and educated when inside their organization, they're not excited about it. They're not really looking and thinking about the technician themselves. Where are they at that moment? Because they have stuff going on in their life as well. But it's a journey. It's not just, do one day of training and that's it. You got to plan, build a career for these technicians, I think, and to get them excited about it and say, okay, you get here, you get a trip, or you get a raise, or you get, more time off, you get more vacation. Like, there has to be something in it for them as well. And I'm not sure. I don't know. That's one of my things that I'm going to be working at over the next few years, trying to help out.
I think there's also, so like what your experience is like union. So in the States, I think the union is not as strong as it was decades ago. And I think maybe the problem is similar to what Adrian was explaining. And what I've seen is that plenty of the journeymen that have plenty of experience, I've worked with some guys that are super knowledgeable, and I just wanted to work with them and just drain as much information as I could from them. But they were terrible teachers. They were just like horrible for trying. They were so impatient. They just wanted to get the job done. And so of course I played along. And so I find tons of personalities that way, especially when they're really good. They're very patient. It's very hard for them to, I guess, take the time and show them. And, sometimes if I can, I'll try to remind them that they were green one time too. And at one point they didn't know anything. And so to take it easy on people. And then even then, I think sometimes you're right. Sometimes the business mentality is lacking. They don't see, business owners don't always see the value in taking the time, paying for guys the time to learn, even in-house. I get the yes, yeah, that sounds great, let's do it. And then it just never happens. They don't prioritize it because other stuff comes first.
Yeah, and it's not only in our industry. I've seen it in the corporate world as well. First thing to go is training. First thing to go and contractors training. Like, oh, let's get rid of training. Well, training is what's going to make your company more money. As a business owner, when you have technicians who know what they're doing, and you teach them too. It's not like you go to a job site and all of a sudden you have to sit there, because there is another thing in there. Like, there's business owners where, okay, you got 2 hours of this job. You need to if you're done in 15 minutes, you got to sit there for an hour and 45 minutes until the time's up. So we get paid for our 2 hours. Because if you leave after 15 minutes, the customer is not going to be very happy with that, because it's a 2-hour quota job. So there's lots of things that may need to be changed or adjusted, because I've talked a lot to technicians like Trevor. Half the time I have to sit around because I can't go do another job, because I know what I'm doing. A lot of the technicians at my company would take 6 hours to do this job, but it takes me 15 minutes because I know what I'm doing. And there's kind of a hindrance there, so it's, how do you get around that stuff as well? So then once again, get into that training, get into that education, get into that mindset to help all the technicians. Because if you had all experienced technicians that knew what they were doing at a company, do you think you would have to work 80 hours a week? No, because you'd go in, they'd fix the job, they'd understand what they were doing. And because a lot of time is, what I've seen is on the job learning. So the customer is paying to train these technicians. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's the customer pays the company to come in and fix the problem. And then they get experience over time, but they should be learning from the journeyman that's fixing that equipment. But that doesn't happen. It's a lot of times, and customers are getting smarter. Like these customers, because they're seeing the bills pile up. Why does it take this technician 2 hours to do this job and this other one takes 8? But that's where, as a good technician, you want to be the 2-hour guy where that business owner is calling up your boss and saying, listen, I want George to come down to my site every time. Don't send anybody else. George needs to be there. And as a technician, that's how you start getting more reputable and more people start hearing about you. And then you're looking for a raise. Your boss doesn't want to give you a raise. Somebody down the street's going to want to give you a raise. That's just the way it is. When you provide value to customers, when you do more work than what you're paid for, people notice that. Maybe not at your organization, but that's another organization that will. That's why building relationship, networking in our industry is so important. Just even doing this, coming here and having a chat, meeting the different people on here. Well,
I'll
so
say this is going to be your last one, is it?
this is the last one. I was going to bring that up. This is the last 30 days. So thank all of you. 30 days straight every day, 6:30 every day. So I want to thank a lot of you that were here and dedicate your time to come hang out with me and my beautiful face here. I think I'm going to come up with something else. I don't know. Do you guys think we should continue on with 6:30s, or should I come up with something else? 'Cause I know I need to do something else.
It's working for us, but if you want to maybe create a larger audience, maybe you ought to try something else.
Is it all about the larger audience though, George?
No,
It's about making an impact, bud. It's about making an impact and how.
I appreciate it. It's part of the reason I've been joining every day. Sometimes, some of the rack systems and CO2s is out of my realm, but I want to learn everything I can. But that's kind of what I was thinking about earlier too. Sometimes it's about mentality, and I think that's what I'm enjoying the most about here is that there's a shared mentality. We're goal driven, and if we can kind of, even if you don't always get to share knowledge, if you get to at least share that drive, that ambition, it can help others too.
Yeah, I really appreciate all your comments over the last 30 days, George. It really helped out this and everybody else who had participated, because it's a lot of fun for me. I love talking about refrigeration, as you know, and learning more, right? I would use the downtime on the job training time, a teachable moment. Yeah, Lowell, you're 100% right. That's something that you should be doing on site, and something I've seen me many times on job sites where I get my job done and then I'm just wasting time for 35 minutes, 40, having a coffee, just chatting when I could have been learning, investing in myself. So minimum runtime on a scroll. Well, there's no real minimum runtime unless you're short cycling, Romer. So 3 minutes anti-short cycle. Anything if you're starting up turning on and off less than 3 minutes, you could run into some issues there. Okay, so I'm going to come up with something else. I don't know. Maybe I'll turn it on tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see if I turn it on. I'm not going to shut the link down yet. How about that? That's what I'll say. But this is day 30. Once again, I want to thank you all very, very much for hanging out with me, getting a conversation going, and maybe we'll see each other tomorrow. We'll see. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.